Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tony Talks and GetUpNGrow, where I have conversations with inspirational leaders, influencers, and change makers, where where I interview people that aren't just doing well in life, but that are doing good in the world by contributing back to society, contributing back to their communities, and contributing back to humanity by sharing their knowledge, sharing their gifts. And again, this is an open dialogue. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing on a dear friend of mine, Brian Bradley of Egoscue, where we always talk about health and wellness and what it means to and what that means and how you keep your body aligned and strengthened. And many times we're talking about the mind and mindset and how the body and mind really are connected. So today, Brian is here, and we also have, so I'll bring Brian on first. And we have another special guest. Here's Brian. What's up, Brian? Good to see you, my dude.
Good to see you, stud. How are you?
Listen, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Today we are fortunate to have another one of your associates. We'll call it another friend and associate, Calvin Murray. So let's bring him in and let me unmute him as well. So how you doing, Calvin?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Tony. Good to be here.
Listen, it's always good to have Brian as a dear friend, and you're a dear friend of his. So it's good to have both of you on. And Calvin is also involved owns an Egoscue studio in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's how this conversation came about. We're all talking about the same thing, and we decided to have a conversation about what's happening in society today. One of the things that's really more important. We've been talking about COVID the whole time and the importance of staying healthy, to be able to endure, to be able to come through it, to be able to remain healthy, and by way of keeping our bodies healthy and everything else. And today we're going to be having a conversation again, also about health, but also our mental health and how to have the conversation about what's going on, have an open dialogue. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that we're able to have a conversation and an open dialogue. So with that said, tell us a little bit about yourself, Calvin, where you are, where you're from, what you've been doing.
Yeah, well, I live in wonderful Woodstock, Georgia. It's right here on the north side of Atlanta. And my wife and I, we run the Egoscue of Atlanta Clinic, right down in Sandy Springs. I'm from Augusta originally. And I've been here for about almost 20 years, about 16 years I've been in Atlanta. But we have 2 kids. One is about to be 6, and a daughter who is just turned 4 back in April. So, this time that we're in, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's near and dear to me and near and dear to my family. It's been tough. But, working through this thing, I found a different angle to approach family and to approach friends. And it's been, I've seen some good results from it. So thanks for having me on. And, as this conversation goes, I'd love to walk you through it, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. So how are things down in Georgia? What's, aside from what we're seeing on TV, I'm in New Jersey. So I know that things have been, really in New York, they've been a lot hotter than they've been in New Jersey. But there have been protests for the most part. I think in New Jersey, they've been peaceful protests, but obviously in New York, they've not always been peaceful. And, we can talk about, why that is and maybe how that is, but how are things down by you in Georgia?
Well, it's, I have to put a different lens on because I'm not a big news watcher. I'm not a big news reader. I can imagine what it looks like down in the city, but I live in the suburbs, so I can't, really speak for what's going on down there. But up here, there's a lot of people talking, there's a lot of people wondering, and there's a lot of people feeling weird about what's going on. So what I've done is just started to approach people instead of, Tony, or let's say Brian. Brian and I, we're friends. All this stuff is going on, and we meet up for coffee because we always meet up for coffee. I know in the back of his head that all this stuff is going on, and I know that he wants to talk to me about it, but he doesn't know how to approach it. doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do. So I just break the ice and just start talking about it. Just let him know, look, man, this stuff doesn't have to be odd. This stuff doesn't have to be weird. And I know that it's tough for you to talk about it. I know that you have the heart to talk about it. I know you have the heart to be with me on my team. And with that, opening up that empathy for him, it allows him to speak a little bit more freely, to open up his heart, and to interact and just take the weirdness out of it. And when we both leave from that coffee, it's a whole new, whole different perspective for me learning from him, and a whole different perspective from him learning from me learning from him as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important to do just that, because and you're right. So dialogue is so important to be able to have this open conversation, because so many times people don't know what to say. I reached out to a few friends of mine and just said, look, man, I don't know what to say except, I just don't. There are no words. There are no words to describe what happens, why it keeps happening. And again, there's many different opinions as to why it happens. Obviously, there's the obvious one, and then there's the others that are a little bit more radical in thought, as to why and who's pushing the buttons to accelerate things one way or another. But to have the conversation, I think it's one of the most important things and it is an uncomfortable conversation. And I had this conversation with a dear friend of mine, a retired Army vet, about 3 days ago, and he was in the Army 23 years, and I don't know if you've ever met him, Brian. You may have met him at one of the events, and he was a field combat medic for 23 years, and many of those years in the field during combat. So he has a unique perspective, and we had a great conversation about it, and it was enlightening and it's uncomfortable, and we had uncomfortable pieces of that conversation. But I think it's so important to open up that dialogue, because I think one of the biggest blocks that we have as a society is we don't communicate enough. We don't. So politics these days is that way. It's one side, it's the other, and they don't communicate effectively. And they don't communicate because everybody wants to be right, and everybody believes that their side is right. And I think that if you always think you're right, then you really learn nothing from life, right?
No, I can't agree more. There's people all over the spectrum. There's people who are super angry. There's people who are even more angry, people who are enraged right now at this point. You have people who are 70, 80 years old who vividly remember what it was like growing up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And then you have people in the middle of the spectrum. And then you have, and I'm talking about Black culture. And then you have people who try to see things from a different perspective. But I understand all the perspectives, and I get it. I'm with you. It's one of the things that's kind of going on now is, hey, I don't want to teach you about racism. I want you to pick up a book and learn. I want you to do some research on your own. I want you to listen to podcasts. There's so much information out there for you, and I'm all for that. I mean, there's so much information out there that can educate you and arm you going forward. But what you did the other day when you reached out to your buddy, it was weird and odd for you. But the fact that you reached out to him, it meant that you had some kind of relationship with him. And when you guys opened up that dialogue and started to understand one another and get perspective from each other, what that did was that opened up your heart a whole lot more than a book would ever open up your heart, because then your buddy and you can understand his story, and his story is going to be more powerful to you than a story that you read in a book or a story that you hear on a podcast. So I applaud you, Tony, for picking up that phone. Keep doing that. I mean that's how this thing changes, right?
That's it. Listen, we all make a difference, and I keep saying that. One person, one voice, one person at a time, reaching out to another person is a way to do it. But you said something that was interesting, because somebody asked on And by the way, anyone who's watching, feel free to ask questions. We'll answer your questions, make comments, and we'll address as many of them as possible. Because again, this is a dialogue, a conversation with Brian, Calvin, and myself, but it's also a conversation with all of you. So by all means, engage, ask questions, make comments. And again, this is all under the umbrella, oddly enough, because again, both of these guys work with Egoscue, and we'll probably somewhere along the way share maybe some exercise to stretch. And because sometimes when you're in the middle of having a deep conversation or something that's uncomfortable, it's good to break the pattern and do something different. But anyway, one of the things that Isaac had said was, so one of the people that commented said, well, what's your outcome? What would you like to see happen? And he said, that's the damn dumbest question you could ask. And it's funny because they knew each other. He said, it's important for everyone to just educate themselves. Don't come and ask me what is it that I want. How do you know what I'm going to deliver to you is fact? Just go out and do the research, find out, look into what other people are saying, what other people are feeling, read. There's podcasts, to your point, there's articles, there's books, there's, unfortunately, this is a story that it's not the first time. And if it was, as shocking as it is, would be horrible. The fact that it is far from being the first time is tragic. It's beyond tragic. The only good that can come from this is that there'll be change, and hopefully there'll be change, and more people are paying attention. And I think at this point, there are many more people paying attention. There are many more people that are interested in the change. We're all learning, right? And hopefully
we are.
And hopefully we're all evolving.
I can't agree more. And Isaac, your buddy, he's when he told you, hey, that's one of the smartest things you can do is open up a book. I mean, people, in Black culture, we feel like, hey, man, I've been trying to educate you for over 400 years, and because there's a burden that still sits on Black people, and it is over 200 years of slavery, and then Jim Crow, and then separate but equal. And think about this. I may be considered a young guy to a lot of guys, but I'm the first generation out of all the generations in my family who was born with civil rights. I'm the second person in my family, and my cousin, she's born a year older than me. She was the first person in my family to be born with civil rights, and everyone else, at not. So it wasn't that long ago. But can you imagine, being a couple in a marriage for 25 years, and of the 25 years, 20 years were just so bad. And during those 20 years, the wife just, kept trying to get the husband to go to therapy, and he just wouldn't go. And, years would go by, and she'd try again, and she just continued to try. And then the kids finally graduated from high school, they're empty nesters, and she's like, you know what, I'm leaving you. I'm tired of this. And then he goes, well, can we try therapy? I've been trying to get you to do this for 20 years, and now you want me to do some work? You go to therapy on your own. So that's how Black people feel. So that's why they're saying, look, go read, go look at a podcast. And I get it. My method, though, is different from that. My method is totally relational, and all of that comes from my faith. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that makes all the difference to me. So whether you believe in him or not, the whole point is a relationship. So you don't have to believe in him at all. But if you start a relationship with someone, that person's more apt to open up to you and more apt to open up their heart to you. That's how we do it at the Egoscue method every single day, is we listen to people, and we empathize with people, and we show them compassion. And then the next thing they're out of the chronic issue that they've been dealing with. It takes some exercise too, don't get me wrong. But most of that work comes from us being selfless at Egoscue. So I take that one step further, and I'm selfless. And when I'm speaking to people who may not understand what's going on, I just take myself out of it and just to put the spotlight on them, and just give myself away and make it all about them. Now, even though they don't look like me, even though they're considered the enemy, I show them empathy, because that always wins.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a
I,
question in regards to that. I've been sitting here listening, and Calvin, I've known you for years, and Tony, I've known you for way too long. I mean, it's almost a problem. But you think about this kind of stuff, and everybody who's dealing with chronic pain, not everybody, I guess, but to people in the world like us who deal with it on a daily basis, the physical therapists, the docs, and all that kind of stuff, I look at it now and go, how are you not educated at this point in 2020 that back pain doesn't really get better from just sitting around and waiting? That was early 80s, mid 80s, early 90s, mid 90s logic line of thinking. But in the last 20 years, everybody I know in the rehab world goes, no, you got to basically exercise this out. You got to stretch, strengthen, balance, whatever, which falls right in line with what Egoscue did 25 years ago when we said we got to switch. Let's do what we can to switch the paradigm of pain. I have the same mentality toward this. When I look at it and I go, how are you not educated? Like, how are you not educated that what we saw, murder porn, which basically was what is that what the guy in Atlanta called it?
Yeah, watching it's like murder, watching it over and over again. I don't understand why they keep playing it. Everybody's already seen it 1,000 times. Stop playing
because
it.
I understand keep playing the end of it, show little pieces, show Chauvin or whatever that. I almost said the CS word, but I won't. But it's a you don't glorify it anymore, but it's a I think that rapper in when the one that LeBron James said, I think is it Murder Mike, or I don't remember his name.
What is that actually?
Killer Mike.
Killer Mike. Unbelievable speech. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. And to see a man like that just emotionally distraught, but yet bringing the facts and laying into CNN was amazing. And, I'm not, if I want to be lied to, I'm going to go to Fox News. And if I want to be lied to, I'm going to CNN, because both these guys are just manipulating the narrative. But it was his take on the thing going, I need y'all to quit spreading fear. Quit spreading fear in our community, in everybody's community. But what I don't get right now is how can you be in this situation and go, I don't see what the problem is, or I need to be educated. I'm sorry. Yes, we all need to be educated further into this. But why aren't we, is the question. When you look at this and go, and I really believe, this is me just believing this, this situation, it's not going away. This is not one of those ones that's going to be swept under the rug and go, no big deal, everybody's over it. This one's not. Now, it's turned itself into its own weird twist of how everybody's manipulating the whole thing in their own ways. But if you look at just what happened, the true stories that are coming out from white policemen now, just angry at what they're seeing, because I was on one of my pro football players. I was driving home from AZ, and I called him up, and I'm like, bro, listen, I am so sorry. I don't even know what to do. I called basically every black friend that I have, and Calvin and I were joking. Yeah, Calvin and I were joking, and we said it's probably only like 2. No, but I was into the mid 30s. Thank you very much. Okay. But the only reason I say that is I was calling going, I'm not calling for my own good to go make me feel better. That's my job, not your job. Educate myself, get over it, understand it, explain it to my kid. But I was on his post, and he said, what do you think? And I said, look, you got to post something too. Because he goes, what am I supposed to tell my kids? I have 2 young kids that are African-American. What am I supposed to tell them? I said, I don't even know what to tell you other than not all people are like that. So I don't know what to tell you. And he posted it. So then I read it. And then there was this one guy on there, I don't know, K Funk or whatever his name was. And it was a weird FUNC or something like that. And he was holding hands, I think, with a little kid. And I found out that he was a white cop from, I think, Jersey, as we were dialoguing back and forth. Because I said, why are you so upset at Justin by saying, I'm not going to follow you anymore? And I'm going, why would you not follow a guy who's putting his feelings out there to say, what do I tell my children now? Well, that's been around for the last 10 years. I mean, I've heard it from pro players that I've talked about that are of African-American descent. And they're going, I don't know what to tell my kid. Because, Brian, when you get pulled over, it's completely different than when I get pulled over. I may not come out of that situation And me as a white dude, I honestly just go like this. I don't even think that way. I don't even think about that. Just that alone. You got to wake the fuck up. I'm sorry. Just that piece alone. Going, am I going to come out of this situation? So,
yeah.
dialoguing with that police officer, I finally said, well, why don't you post something and name it the same thing? Because if you have kids, you've got to answer the same question. What do I tell my kid who thinks that I'm a cop, just like the guy in Minnesota?
Yeah, it totally goes both ways. And I like the analogy. I like the way you threw a question back at him. People don't know or aren't aware of what's going on or what has been going on for years, because it's blinders. I mean, everyone has their own blinders on, right? There's certain things that I'm not aware of. So I get that. Everything that you're taught as a child, everything that you've experienced, everything you watched, to media that you consume, all of those things form, your frame of reference. And that frame of reference, oftentimes, puts you on one side or the other. So the further you're away from the other side, the easier it seems, right? So it's like, why don't you just break up with that guy? He's no good for you. Yeah, it's easy to you because you've been married 25 years, but this is a different situation for me. But these when you have a frame of reference, it's easy to just filter everything through that. And it's easy to just forget about what the other side sees, thinks, and feels. So frame of references, those are the reasons why you have the issue. With me, I filter through a point of reference. So my point of reference, my frame of reference isn't and you may get some blowback. So I may get some blowback for this, but it's not black culture. It's not white culture. It's not I choose blue. I choose red, and I say I choose red for the blood of Jesus, and everything that I need to know in order to treat another human being the way that they need to be treated. And I just find it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I'm good to go. That's where my mindset comes from. My mindset comes from that when I'm dealing with friends personally. That's where my mindset comes from when I walk into my clinic down in the city. We have a point of reference, that just gives you the key to life. So then you can start to filter those frame of references out, all those things that you've learned, all those things that you see, and so on.
That's one of the reasons why I hit you up, early in the week going, listen, I just got off the phone, with a couple of these other players and stuff like that. And, you and I have known each other for decades, or at least that. And I look at it and go, what do we do, as a culture, as a company? You and I talked about it from the company standpoint. What message do we put out to our people in the company? What message do we put out to people outside looking at the company? That kind of stuff. And, I thought your answer was pretty awesome in the sense that don't put something out if it's not coming from the heart. And I couldn't agree with you more, because if you guys remember, was it 3 days ago or was it Tuesday that they did the is it Blackout Tuesday? They did everybody on Instagram. Everybody had the blackout pages. Yep. God, I mean, you talk about you getting some. I'm gonna get some blowback for this, but that's okay. I was so pissed off when I saw that, because if you think that is doing anything, and I'm not saying that it's not useful. What I'm saying is the people that are doing it are going, well, I did my part. That's not enough. Like, it's just not enough. You're not doing, honestly, you're not doing shit. You're just posting on the most narcissistic platform on the planet. And so, there were some people putting still some ads up about their businesses and stuff. And I was thinking, oh God, they're in trouble because they didn't go over to the Blackout Tuesday. So I just chose not to do anything. But it came up in our meeting. I was just like, what do we do? I said, I know we're not going to implode internally, but do we have a message that we want to put out? And yeah, Katie, that's absolutely the truth. Put putting something out where it's just this, and everybody was, I know that Mary B, I'm good friends with her. She's with Robbins, and I think she put hands holding in the back, like a silhouette or like a heart that was on there. And I really like that message. But a lot of people were just putting stuff up because, oh, okay, so this is what I should be doing on this Tuesday. Like, it's got to come from a different place. It's got to come from a different place. It's got to come from, different people's music. I have an 18-year-old kid, and he loves all types of music. Like, he was playing Pink Floyd coming home the other day, but he also likes, I couldn't tell you what the names of certain things are. Don't I sound like my dad right now? Like, what's that NWA, Public Enemy? And that's what I had to go back through the 80s and be like, Dad, okay, just let it go. I got it. We're good. But you play this type of music, and I'm listening to it, and I'm going, wow. I said, a lot of times, people have to be sensitive to what the message is talking about, whether it's, I don't know, Journey or Pink Floyd or Cardi B, or is Cardi B a group, or is that,
Man, I don't like past 1990, past Tupac and Biggie, man. A little tough.
Don't you wish they were still alive? God, they were good.
90s, that's my decade.
But you go back, it's you look at the message that Tupac was putting out, and much different than sometimes what Biggie was putting out, but how the system pitted them against each other, and because of the way it's going to sell, and we lost two amazing human beings at that point, just from an artist standpoint, especially Tupac with the stories that he was telling. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. At the core of this thing, man, and just side tangent, Tupac, he was ahead of the curve. All he was talking about some bad stuff, but the good stuff that he was talking about was putting other people first. Giving to other people, sacrificing himself for other people. Those are the messages that he was putting out, and whether it be some of it in his music or interviews that he did. That guy was ahead of the curve. But at the core of this whole thing, I'm retarded. Period. For any side that you choose, it's an art issue, and it's a culture issue. Anytime you choose a culture over a human being, you're always going to have an issue because you aren't even trying to empathize with that person.
Yeah, trying to understand, Calvin, is the number one thing. I brag about it that Master Co and I play the great sport of table tennis, which I know everybody wishes they could, but they play garage ping pong. I get it. I understand where I use the karate. Okay. But it's a, huge Asian culture in the high levels of like US Nationals, US Open, all that stuff. My doubles partners, Chinese, just moved here not too long ago, and the reason I say this is that it was my obligation at that point. I just had a want to understand her culture, because look, if we're going to be spending that much time playing together at tournaments and stuff, and you're going to want to go eat here, I'm going to go eat here, it was my job in my mind to understand that person, to give me a little bit more insight about that person. That's where we are right now. Just be interested. And sorry that it took this to do it, but it's where we are.
Yeah, and it's it wasn't just this. George Floyd, he is super important, but it's one more thing. There's so many names that we can name. Now, there are so many names that we cannot name because things that happened during my mom's generation, my grandma's generation, people that were lost, it's countless, and those names aren't necessarily remembered. And it thanks, but we've been trying to get this thing going, trying to educate throughout this whole entire I guess generation after generation. And now, but here's the good news: people are starting to listen. We can complain about, man, I've been trying to tell you for the longest, or we can say, what, people are listening now. Let's grab this bull by the horn, and let's do it together. At this point, at that point, you do have to put some anger aside, and you do have to have a high level of humility. Both sides have to have a high level of humility. You have to have a high level of humility in order to say I was wrong. Roger Goodell was just like, look, we screwed that up, right? You know how much that took for him to have to get on camera. I was at the Masters 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, and I was walking by a clubhouse, and I said, "Man, that's Roger Goodell. He's in a green jacket. Doggone guy's a member." So he is in the elite of human beings on earth, wealth-wise. And he went on camera and said, I was wrong. That is humility. No matter if it was scripted or not, he still had to do it. But both sides have to do that as well, because you can have the 75-year-old black man that has been through it. Born in Jim Crow. Drinking out of different water fountains, beaten, dogs sick on him. Kids picked up by the police for no reason. But when people start to listen, if you do have their attention, it's going to take a high level of humility for that person as well to say, you know what, all this happened, but I'm ready to listen. And it's probably going to take a higher level of humility because that person's been, a 75-year-old black man's been through the ringer. The famous Chris Rock says, there's nobody more racist than an 80-year-old black man. That's what he says. And it's true because the things that they've been through, I can't even imagine, some of the things that, my aunts, my grandmas, uncles and stuff went through. I can't, I was born with civil rights and I'm married to a white woman. I live in a white suburb on the north side of Atlanta. It can be like I'm in an ivory tower, but I'm not in an ivory tower because when I walk out this door, when I walk into the grocery store, I know that I'm interviewing for every black person that person's going to meet.
Yeah, that's what pissed me off the other day was the guy who he's probably 10 years younger. What's your age right now?
40.
Okay, so he was probably 25, 26, young black man, white shirt, dressed up, and he just said, he goes, what I have to do, I just know how to act. And again, my fucking blood pressure starts doing this because I'm like, okay, what do you mean you know how to act? You mean you have to do something? And yeah, he does. He said, I have to go out and put on a show. I have to go out and smile and look at people and go, yeah, I'm not this. And I'm so sorry that he has to think that way. It breaks your heart because my son doesn't think that. My son walks out and goes, I'm going to kick ass today, because I brainwashed him while I was sleeping. You're a Bradley. You're a winner. That kind of stuff, which I'm sure you're doing to your kids. But it's,
I'm in Series 7, so no.
It's not too early to brainwash them. But you did bring up the faith thing, and it's one of these things that I think is funny. When people, my opinion again, and I'll get shit for this, but if people don't believe in something other than themselves, man, are you lost? You are lost. You've got it. I don't care if it's, and I honestly don't care if you believe in Jesus, Allah, Buddha. I really don't care. But if you believe in something, you're at least accountable to something versus going, oh, it's all about me.
Mm-hmm. Well, most principles that you learn in a lot of faith is never about you. And let me address, your friend that said, hey, I put on the show. Some black people feel exactly that way, right? Now with me, what you see is what you get. I used to be uncomfortable because I know that, sometimes I wouldn't be black enough to hang out with black people or white enough to hang out with the white folks, right? And a lot of folks, went through that hung out or that, grew up in the suburbs. I didn't grow up in the suburbs. I grew up in a tough area, but when I moved high schools, my mom had me go to another high school and live with my aunt. Then, I started to, experience the different side of things. There's a burden, that I was born with, and I didn't ask for it. It's kind of like being, born, white or being born black. It's just what you get is what you get.
Dude, you just said it perfectly. You had to move in with your aunt to go to a different high school. My kid's never going to experience that. Thank God, right? But
it was a choice that was made. It was a good choice. It was a choice that was made, and it was a good choice that was made because that school was in essence, it prepared me a little bit more for college than my old school did.
No, I know that, but you still had to make a choice. It's not like you said, I'm going to go to a private school because I have the money to spend or something like that. My kid's school's 48% Latino. I apologize if I said it wrong, but it's I looked at it, I'm like, God, what a great culture. I'm like, bro. And so we gave him 3 years of Spanish, and he plays soccer, so he can have a fluent conversation, and it's a respect back and forth. But it was like my dad growing up in inner city Pittsburgh. He was the fastest white kid in Pittsburgh, had tryouts with the Steelers and Colts. I'm only telling you this I didn't get those genetics, trust me.
I know.
You don't have to rub it in. And Tony, don't back him up. Thank you. But it's but you know what it did is we didn't grow up with it. We were in the middle of central Pennsylvania, had no idea that we were in an all white town, right outside of Penn State University, that kind of stuff. And just, okay. Cause we didn't realize the difference, so the same thing with my kid, I tried to get him to understand it. And I'll tell you what a little secret that white parents can do, because this whole white privilege thing is just kind of pissing me off at another level too. Because if you think that your kid has white privilege, if you think about it, it could be defined as, well, my white privilege, which already makes you think that you're a step higher than everybody else. So it's driving me crazy mentally. But you could take them to the park every day and get them to play with every kid, every race, every gender, every belief, every religious belief. And that's what I used to do with my kid physiologically. Like Tony and I have talked about this, and Calvin, you and I have talked about this, about developments of kids. Physiologically, I gave him the unfair advantage because I would literally take him to the park and make him play for 3 hours at a time. And then, yes, I would reward him with McDeath on the way out. So he could get 2 cheeseburgers and a milkshake, and then he'd get a stomach ache. And I go, that's why we call it McDeath. But I understand. Listen, don't get me wrong. I was driving to AZ, and God, that Big Mac and Coke are amazing when you're on a road trip. But it was it's when we gave him that culturally, it was to physiologically give him that advantage, emotionally give him that advantage, and that was just a thought instilled from a generation ago.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with that education and with, again, emotional intelligence. It's something that's been coming up a lot. But giving people the understanding, because the reality of it is, a lot of people, if you grow up in a sheltered community in the middle of Pennsylvania or in the middle of any town USA, you don't have the exposure to it, right? So people just have to have those conversations, have to have that communication with people to be able to, again, have that dialogue, to know what people, to have a conversation, to see what people go through, to understand, and not just read it in the book, and not just watch it on TV, but to have that human contact, that human experience. You need to have that human experience, that human contact, so that there could be a different level of understanding, that emotional connection. And I think that emotional intelligence and being able to understand and being empathetic to what people are going through. It's easy to say, well, paint with a broad brush because you don't understand, but you can make yourself understand. You can educate yourself. You can, and that's really at the end of this. This has to do with education, and it has to do with respect and self-respect. Because being able to, if you don't have a healthy level of respect for yourself and the people that in your family and the people that you're around, then it's impossible for you to have respect for a stranger. It's just not going to happen. So, and all of that starts at home. It starts with, look, I'm telling my kids, we're watching this, and I'm having the conversation with my kids, and making them understand that, for example, we live in a nice town. I grew up in Newark. I grew up in the city of Newark as an immigrant. It was not an easy time. Very culturally diverse. I went to a high school that is still has its challenges, right? I had my run-ins with gangs and with whatever. Got my ass kicked multiple times, because I got jumped or whatever. So it happens, and it exists, right? Stress exists, conflict exists, racism does exist. It's inevitable. Depending on people's experiences, they're going to be more leaning towards one side or the other. But the reality of it is, what we experience in life, it's life is there to teach us. Right? That's life happening for us. Life is there to teach us, and then what we do with it, whether we grow and evolve, or whether we stay bitter and angry and don't grow and don't grow beyond our own feelings and our own emotion, because it's all about me. It's all about me. It's all about me, right? And what I think and what I need. But it's not just about me. It's about we, right? It's about thinking of the larger community. It's about understanding that we've all got to grow together. If we can't stand together, we'll, we fall, right? As the saying, united we stand, divided we fall. And that kind of almost takes me into a different direction. But the reality of it is, there's powers that be that would like to see and want to see this divide, and it's up to us. It's up to the individual. It's up to the communities to heal those, to make those connections, and to start the healing organically within our communities, within our towns, within our neighborhoods. Because if we're waiting for big government to do it, we're screwed. Every one of us is screwed, both sides and the middle, right? So it's up to us. We need to take a stand. We need to have those conversations. We need to have those uncomfortable conversations. Because if we don't, I'm afraid, listen, the system ain't going to fix it. There's no magic wand that's going to fix this overnight. Again, it's been 400 years of this. And it's been, even after the civil rights have been passed and everything else, there's still been, how much of this happens. But it really is about getting to the other side. And that is through communication, through humility, through courage. Man, courage. It takes courage. It takes courage to say I'm sorry. Right? It takes courage to accept the apology. It takes courage to forgive.
Drew Brees just had to do it.
Yeah. But it takes courage.
Yep.
It takes courage to step up and say, listen, I screwed up. I'm sorry. It takes courage to say, this is wrong. It takes courage to say, we could do better. We should do better. It takes courage to say that we will not tolerate this anymore. It takes courage to go out and protest. It doesn't take any courage to go out and riot and loot, by the way. I understand where the pent-up frustration and anger, and it didn't help that everybody was cooped up for the last freaking 2-3 months. It didn't help that people were financially cash strapped. None of that helped. And it's almost like this was perfect timing. Again, another conversation for another time. But it takes courage to do the right thing. It takes courage to do the right thing. I think it's Les Brown that says, you do what is hard and your life will be easy. You do what is easy and your life will be hard. So I feel that we've had times in it's easy to just to sweep this under the rug and kick the can down the road and say, we'll do this later. We'll deal with this later. Kick the can down the road. Okay, everybody's calm down. Okay, next, murder hornets or whatever they're going to come up with to distract us from whatever it is. No, seriously. I mean, think about it. Come up with the freaking murder hornets. That was such a crazy thing to just try to distract it from one thing or another. So what's next that is going to come up to change the narrative again, to change the focus from what's happening? Because,
that's the one thing that's the one thing that Calvin and I do. When Calvin, you were around for these conversations that we have on Zoom with all of our clinic owners and all that kind of stuff. And Tony was the role player during the Unblinded, where I was on the hot seat along with Anil Gupta. And we had a great time. I learned a lot. And, when Anil and I get to talk, it's going to be a lot of fun because I think that I could really help just from what I was feeling as he was going. And, and maybe the same thing back and forth, hey, Brian, this is what I could recommend. You were coming across pretty hard. You could smile more. You could do this, whatever. I'm going to listen because I'm open to it. I launched one of those yesterday, Calvin, to the San Francisco and Del Mar staff in regards to the Dave Asprey box. Dave Asprey comes out with this box 4 times a year, and Egoscue made an offer to do these postural assessments for everybody who's a subscriber. And I'm a little worried. I was like, do we know the right language? Are we going to speak the bulletproof biohacking language? Because I had some people go, what's biohacking? I'm like, I'm sorry. Have you been living under a rock? Can we find out what that is? But having that role play, Tony, game changer. One of my therapists in San Francisco wrote me back and said, I am 1000% more motivated than I've ever been with Egoscue now because of this situation that we just had in the role play, because, she had some stuff go on this year, whatever. And she just said, I was kind of just getting, and she's like 25. So at 25, she just, you turn to your phone to get excited, that kind of stuff. And, Katie got the box good. And it was one of these.
I ordered it mine. I got to order mine. I'm going to do that today.
Actually. Yep, do it. But they, the reason I tell you this is the role playing with the judges. I made 3 people judges, 2 people role played, and Michael was the, the person who was playing the part. And instead of just saying, do this, it's let's role play. So how did that phone call feel? Oh, it felt good. Okay, how would you grade them? So now we're talking about the tough stuff. And somebody came out and goes, well, I'll be honest, I'd give you like a 5 at the most. And I'm like, ooh, okay, good. But I agree with you. And then they gave the other person an 8, because you have to step up and go, if I don't tell them the truth, if I don't take a chance and voice my opinion, right or wrong, then it's going to fester inside of you. And then it's going to show up as something stupid like, and I think Katie said this on here, hurt people. Right. It's always a hurt person who hurts people. And, maybe that's what was going on. And I'm not saying that we feel bad for this hurt cop, whatever. No, he made a lot of cops look bad. And I have friends in law enforcement, at least 20 of them, and they are bummed. One guy won't even park his car in my neighborhood now. He'd park his car out front, and I always loved it because then at least we knew, okay, there's a cop there. He won't even park his car outside anymore. He goes, I don't want to be seen. What?
Yeah, I was talking to a police officer up here in our cul-de-sac, and man, guys almost in tears because of what they're going through right now too.
It's terrible.
You have to lay the empathy on the line for those guys. And by the way, man, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've been pulled over at least 15 times, and I've never had a bad experience. So I see things from a certain perspective, but I also get, the culture. Maybe I didn't have the bad experiences, but my friends have. Maybe I didn't have the bad experience. I know the burden exists, and I have to teach my son certain things so that he does not have a bad experience.
Yeah, you had to do that as a black father. I did it as a white father, not because, it's going to be bad for you. You probably came maybe from a different place when you do that, when your kids are finally driving. But I did it from a respect position. He's in a position of not authority. I don't look at it as a cop as an authority figure. I look at him as another human being who's trying to keep the peace in our society. The good ones, right? And I know it's going to be hard to wither out the bad ones. But my friend who flies, he was Air Force and flies for United now. Another one of my black friends. So yeah, I've already counted more than 2, Calvin, so shut up. Right?
Keep trying.
Yeah, keep trying. Brian has more. This guy said an interesting thing when he said, or was it, I think he quoted Chris Rock too. He said, Chris Rock said, every company and every business does have bad apples, but policemen can't. Mm-hmm. A fireman can have a bad apple. Okay, he doesn't set up the ladder right. Okay, whatever. He doesn't pull out the hoses correctly, or just doesn't want to, or just whatever. Sprays his buddy with a hose. Okay, I get it. But you give somebody one of these and a badge, it's a whole different story when the power takes over.
Absolutely. Yeah, the power conversation is oof, man, that's a deep one. But really quickly, Tony, I appreciate you speaking just a moment ago. Everything that you were talking about was all relational. So it still goes back to a heart issue and a relational issue. And when those things change, then all of a sudden you start to see, changes. But power, to me, power power, wealth, and influence, and this is not a political statement at all, but power, wealth, and influence were never meant for me to take advantage of it myself, for you guys to take advantage of it for yourself. It was always meant to be given away to other people, right? No, it's not saying, hey, you making $1 million a year, you have to give it all away. No, you can live a nice lifestyle, right? But what are you doing to love your neighbor with your power, your wealth, and your influence? Because when you really think about it, I mean, you guys know some high-level guys. I mean, like super high-level guys. CEOs, athletes, whatever it may be. You guys are high-level, but you respect the other high-level guys that you know. But the guys that you respect the most, when you really think about it, are the guys who give selflessly, the guys who put other people first. Those are the people that you put above, those high-level guys that industry-wise. So those guys are giving away their wealth. They're figuring out how to be a philanthropist. They're giving away their influence. How can I use my influence to build up this community or to help, other individuals? How can I use my power to affect change for this group or whatever it may be? Wealth, power, influence, not meant for me. It's meant for me to share that with other people. So
I love that. I love that. I say it all the time. I learned this from a friend, Scott Schilling. He said he would tell all of his mentors, teach me everything, and I promise I won't keep any of it. Right? It's about giving back. It's about learning and giving it, because what's the point of accumulating knowledge if you don't use it to help others? If you just use it to help yourself, it's just not. That's right. There's a social responsibility component to that I think that we all need to jump on. And by the way, Brian, you'll be happy to know. And by the way, yes, Susie Foster, we are talking. We were talking about the unblinded huddle, the unblinded sales mastery. And Brian, you'll be happy to know that you're in my 10, right? And so is Anil.
Oh, that's good.
So, and by the way, and a certain Katie Carlson is also on our team, by the way, just an FYI.
Wait, you let Katie join it?
I did.
Okay, I can't do that. That's torture.
You're live.
Oh shit! And she's on here. Oh no! Oh, yeah, she's actually on this podcast.
Yeah, Anil called me before. I told him I was on the call right now, and then you were talking about Anil, so that's kind of funny. We're like having this conversation, and it's kind of all around this piece. But yeah, so listen, this is a conversation that needs to be had, needs to continue. We need to continue to have this conversation. And I encourage everybody that's on here watching to have this conversation with as many people as you can, because it is through compassion. It is through passion behind it, and through compassion, and through caring, and through courage and respect and love and humility. And again, courage, education. And I think, listen, we're going to come out of this stronger. And there was something that I read from Ernest Hemingway the other day, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. And I quoted this yesterday, and I quoted it the day before, and I'm going to quote it again. And I'm gonna beat up the quote, but it basically says, "For God's sakes, keep going. This time, keep going. Go all the way." That's basically his quote. Maybe a few words that are worded differently, but I say that because this has happened. This keeps happening, and we need to evolve past this. I say it all the time that it's when we fall that we learn, and when we get up that we grow. But we're just getting up and going. We're not getting up and growing. We need to grow through this so we don't keep going through this. And that comes through education and respect and evolution. We have to evolve past this black and white issue. Listen, there's more mocha out there right now than black and white anyway, I think, at this point, right? Because we're all one, right? We're all one. We're all the same on the inside. We all bleed red. We all have the same thoughts. We all have the same fears. We all have the same challenges in life, right? We all have the same problems, arguably different problems, different level of problems, but we all face the same fears and the same concerns with raising our kids and with our with business and with relationships and we all face the same thing. So we're all one. Right. And I think that when we recognize that and we can move past that and just again have that mutual respect and love, I think we'll be a lot better for it.
Well, and that's what I was just going to say is that I love that idea of like, we're all one, we're this, we understand. No, we don't. I mean, we're at a point right now where we're in the infancy stage, and I'm sorry it took this death to do it, but it was coming. When what you're seeing now is not just the murder of a black man by a white cop. What you're seeing afterward is the tipping point of everything that is, I won't say wrong in this country, but everything that is lost. I mean, it's the only word I can come up with. It's that, when we think that, hey, love thy neighbor is no longer. That's why I do this stuff on my front porch or my backyard. I wave at my neighbors. I can hear kids walking by. You got to be part of your community. And what I love about Calvin and listen, I know Calvin because I've known his wife for even longer, and she's one of my favorite humans on the planet. That's no BS. And it's I think to myself, my conversation with Calvin was, what are you guys going to put out? Are you going to do anything on, what's your message? And he's like, no, I have a much different message. I'm coming from an empathy toward you because I know you want to have the conversation. Goddamn right. I want to have the conversation. I really do. Because, I've got a responsibility to a lot of people that I influence, and to myself to make sure that it's clear, and my instincts are, I'm a person who goes on my instinct, but are your instincts right? So I did put in 30 some phone calls to get a collective, and then I put in another 30 to my other close friends, who are Mexican, Asian, black, white, whatever, and I'm just getting everybody's collective, but everybody seems to be in the same spot. Nobody's happy right now in the sense of what's going on. There's nobody going, this had to happen. Bullshit. Okay, it had to happen. I get that it brought this out, but there might have been a better catalyst to get it happen, which is what we see Tony doing. The other Tony Rodriguez, Tony Robbins, putting out some stuff where, in capital letters yesterday, just going, okay, enough is enough. Can we look at this situation and finally do something about it? Just like what you said, let's not stop. Let's go all the way. Let's actually do something. So Calvin, we're going to get toward the end of this talk here. You should be the one to finish this up and put icing on this. People are looking to be going, well, what do you want us to do? Because we got to act.
So a couple of things. Our country generally divided down the middle. And these aren't political statements again, but one side wants truth and one side wants justice. The truth seekers say, well, he broke the law, and the justice seekers say, well, what about the burden that was put on us that caused us to break the law in the first place? So you got two sides pulling against one another when justice and truth were never meant to be apart. They were always meant to be together. And no human being could ever exude that until Jesus Christ entered this world, and he exuded both justice and truth. But he did it through grace, he did it through compassion, he did it through empathy, and all the other virtues that go along with building a relationship with a human being. An action item would be to open up your heart. Just continue to open up your heart and be willing to have conversations across the line. Another one is when you're in those uncomfortable situations and your friends that look like you, and they're saying things that will probably hurt my feelings if I were present, speak up. It's tough. It is hard, because the person probably thinks that you think like them too. That's why they're comfortable enough to say it around you. But speak up. Say, hey man, hey, what do you mean by that? Tell me more. And put yourself in a position to educate them on the experiences that you've had with other folks, perspectives that you have, and just learn his too. Then I think the last one is, the message. Message always gets hijacked by media, for the most part. So, you have George Floyd, you have the protests right now. You have Black Lives Matter. You've had other protests before. You have Colin Kaepernick, one of the most controversial, sports figures in the last decade or two. But each one of the messages always get hijacked. But the message is, with all of them, is just please quit killing us. That's what the message is. Across the board, black folk. I just want, I'm going to want my son when he's old enough. I'm going to want him to go out and be who he is, and then be able to come back home. I had a friend ask me, "Oh, would you let your son get dreads?" I was like, "Absolutely not," because of the way I know that he will very well be perceived out there. Could be, an awesome kid, but I mean, oftentimes the awesome kid can't even express themselves, as 15, 16-year-old, because they could very well be stereotyped. I would like my son to come back home. Once he leaves my house and he's able to protect himself better, then he can express himself. And that's things that I even have to think that way. Because, some people are listening to this saying, why would you let your child express yourself? Or some people listening saying, man, I get it, because you just want your son to come back home to you. So listen to the message, open up your heart, and engage those who are saying those things that would be contrary to, really an open heart.
Hey, and I know, Tony, you're going to want to close this here in a second, but it just reminded me what Calvin just said. There's a guy who I know out here in San Diego named Milo Bryant. He's a strength guy, does a lot of the Titleist performance. He's on the board with me. And, we talk about performance with young kids all the time, junior performance stuff with Titleist. And people are asking him, he's such a good dude. And he's posting a lot of stuff like, I have different emotions now. I don't know what to think. And they're changing every day, but it's interesting what somebody said to him. He said, there's one statement, I think, and I'm going to paraphrase this. I'll trash it. He'll let me know if I'm right or wrong. Somebody who says, I don't even see color. I'm so non-racist that I don't even see color. And he gave me a different perspective. He said, well, that's wrong, because I am a beautiful black man and I want you to see me as that. And I thought about it. I'm like, he's exactly right. He's exactly right. I used to say, oh, it's my friend Tony, blah, 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 blah. And we'd be joking around about some stuff, or, hey, my friend Justin and all that. But I never say, this is my black friend Calvin. I'm not going to walk around saying that, but I know it's real. I know that when you and I go into a restaurant, people see me walk in, but they might not even see you, or they do see you more, and it's different. And that's the kind of stuff that has to change. Like, you got to see, not everybody's the same, but me, because of Milo, I am absolutely going to see my black friends as black friends, and I'm going to label them as black friends, because he's brought up to a case, or maybe just him, if nobody else is comfortable. I'm not going to walk around saying it, but it brought a new perspective to go, look at the beauty of this person, versus going, like, I want you guys to see me as my Italian, Irish, American friend. That's what I am. Italian, Irish, American. So, I'm very proud of my heritage. I look at it and go, and when Italy was getting pounded with COVID, it got pretty emotional. Like, it was like, wow, they're getting crushed. Like, all these old, amazing Italian people are just passing by the tens of 20s to 50s to hundreds to thousands. It's just a shame. But I know there's a reason, which goes back to your belief, Calvin. God has a plan. Something's coming out of this. And that's the only thing faith-wise. And nobody can prove it. Nobody can prove that God is alive. I'm sorry. But you can have faith and feel it, which then proves it to me, proves it to you, proves it to Tony and anybody else listening. So I hear you. And thank you so much, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. I was so glad you took this on. I hit up Justin Tuck in the beginning of this, and I said, hey, we're on. I took a picture, and he said, I'm on another one, or I'd come on. So
as a Jesus follower, So Jesus says, look, people will know that you're my follower by the way that you walk. So by the way that I walk and move every day, hopefully people feel that on them when they're in my presence.
I feel it.
Maybe it sucks. I don't know, but hopefully they don't.
Yeah, that's awesome. As the saying goes, be the change that you want to see in the world. Show up the way you want people to see you, and show up the way that you want other people to show up. Right. So I appreciate you being here, man. I appreciate your perspective. Brian, appreciate you, brother. Thank you for all of you that are watching.
Sorry, it's one of my black friends. Excuse me.
That's
Tony.
I deal with them.
Hey, I'll call you right back.
So, so I appreciate you coming out with your perspective as well. And again, this is a conversation. I'd be happy to have this conversation again at a later time with other people, with Tuck and whoever else. Be interesting to have a panel of this again, because I think it's important. And it can't. I don't know that you can't have too many conversations over this. Right.
No, and you almost have to have the antithesis. That's where that debate would come into play. I would love the person. What's her name? Candace Owens. She's a young African-American black female who came on and she's, I'm not going to condone and make a hero out of George Floyd. And I was like, wow, okay, wait a minute. And to hear her whole dialogue was amazing. But to hear Killer Mike's dialogue, amazing. To hear my friend Justin say, what do I tell my kids? To hear you come from, I'm empathetic toward my white friends or anybody who wants to talk about this because I'm coming from a place of faith. It's all powerful, so it's a, Tony, I thank you for not asking us to do any exercises today because I'm not in the mood. Just not in the mood. Maybe Calvin can do it, but I'm not in the mood.
Yeah, do it, man.
Do it another time. And for everyone that's watching here, this is a conversation that needs to be had. It's a conversation that we're going to be having on an ongoing basis. And and listen, the exercises will come. By the way, if anybody that's watching, certainly now till the end, share this. If you think that there's value in this, if there's value in these conversations, which I know that there are, share them. And and to go back to the thing, I'm not, it's not about making George Floyd a hero. It's about pointing out, because people were talking about, well, this is who he was and this is what he did. It was about the action. It was what happened, because that could have been any one of us. And again, I've said this over and over again, but Martin Luther King said, and this is one among many, but this is one of my favorite quotes of his as well, is injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Because today it was him. Tomorrow, Brian, it could be you, just because they decided that, you whatever. But it could be Calvin. It could be, and obviously right now it's happening to the black community. But again, if we allow that, it's going to continue to happen in that community, and it spreads to others.
I'm very aware of it because it could happen, through Antifa and all this other stuff that's coming out to say, hey, we're coming to the suburbs now. It's like, what? What do you mean you're coming to the suburbs? And they're not going to separate whether you agree or disagree or anything like that because they've stolen the narrative.
Right.
And it's a...
and that's the point. Look at this as again, it is a Black Lives Matter thing. It is that, and it's a human thing. This is a human problem. That's why everybody needs to get to get involved, and everybody needs to really get engaged. Have the conversation. It's important. It's probably the most important thing that we're going to be dealing with in this decade, for sure.
Absolutely.
There's no question. So I think the most important thing is don't stop. We just got to keep going with this and have the uncomfortable conversations. Be smart about what comes out of your mouth and think about it, right?
Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's it. Absolutely. And just, again, have the courage to speak out, have the courage to have a conversation, have the courage to apologize, have the courage to make amends, have the courage to forgive, have the courage to just step up, step out of your comfort zone and grow to the other side of it. So again, guys, I appreciate you being here. It is already, we're 1:10, we're 10 minutes over. I appreciate everyone that's here. and everyone that stayed with us from the beginning. Appreciate you all. And remember, my friends, that life is not about how many times you fall. It's about learning to get up after every fall and having the will and the courage to get up after every fall. And it's in falling down that we learn. It's in getting up that we grow. And every time we fall, we have the opportunity to get up and grow. And we're at that opportunity right now, and we must grow. So, do your part. We all make a difference. Appreciate you all. You guys don't go away. We'll chat for a few minutes after the show. Everyone that's watching, thank you very much. I appreciate you all. And I will see you guys on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. There's a few other comments here that I'm just going to pop in. Appreciate everyone that's here, everyone that came. Love and peace. And I've been ending them all this way. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. See you guys.